Each branch of the Appleton line leads to completely different tangents, all of which could lead to some interesting facts. So, let's start with Flapple, being an extension of the overall history of the fruit, and also delving into apple engineering and art. Also, it learns the move grab apple, and its animation shows an apple falling from the tree. This is clearly a hint towards Sir Isaac Newton and the formulation of the law of gravity. In German, the move is simply called gravitation. Also, Flapple is the evolution that can fly and thus defy gravity. Thanks, Live Lessons 7401. Of course, the apple started as the unimpressive crab apple. Though it was brought to the Americas in the 1600s, with the first orchard in the States dating back to 1625 by William Blackstone, followed by the works of truly legendary yet celibate man who left his mark on both history and American culture. Johnny Appleseed, born John Chapman, started his life in Leominster, Massachusetts back in 1774. His dream was to produce so many apples that no one would ever grow hungry. While one legend paints a picture of Johnny as a dreamy wanderer, planting apple seeds throughout the countryside, simple research revealed him to be a careful, organized businessman. Over a period of nearly 50 years, bought and sold tracts of land and developed thousands of productive apple trees. For half a century, he created nurseries from Massachusetts to even Canada. He spread his seeds, was an advocate for life, was considered to be eccentric, taught how to plant, sold his trees for a small fee, contributed to the creation of Red Delicious and Golden Delicious apples, and lived to the ripe old age of 70, known for his faith and lived for others. But before the legend of John Chapman, there's more to the core of the apple story after Kazakhstan. You see, apples are not self-fruitful, meaning that in order to have a single apple, you have to pollinate it from a kind of tree to another that leads to a wealth of new varieties. And in theory, the next would have to be the best traits from their parents. Because it took carrying the seeds of apples from Kazakhstan to Europe in 1500 BC to grow more cultivars. Then ancient Greeks discovered grafting, a practice Johnny Appleseed detested, by the way, in 800 BC. Then, ancient Romans planted orchards in Britain in 200 BC, which explains how apple originated, quote-unquote, in Galar. Japan got their first apples, crab apples, from China around 918 AD, but didn't get a taste of our varieties from America until 1871, becoming something to wish good fortune and prosperity, leading to the blossoming art of fruit carving. Its history truthfully intertwines as much with diverse narratives from Thailand, China, and Japan. Sure, it's gotten its popularity in the last decade or so, but the origins clash, like the knives needed for the art. As some accounts suggest, fruit carving started during China's Tang Dynasty, a good era with an apropos name for redefining the transformation of flavor. Whereas Thailand's traditional lore attributes its popularity to the Loy Krathong, with Loy meaning to float, and Krathong being a buoyant basket festival in the Sukhothai region. You can use this holiday to float away your anger and grudges. There's a 14th century tale that revolves around Nang Napa March, who was the servant of Thai King Phra Huang, who pioneered fruit carving during the Festival of Lights, the Krathong. Japan got the tradition of artistically slicing fruit through decorative garnishing. Oh, that's right! Thai fruit carving uses a different single knife for their craft, whether it is the round handle or plain handle knife versus mukimono, which uses a sharp thin knife. As for whether hollowed-out apples would maintain flight, they're relatively resilient fruits, as it requires overcoming the fruit's structural integrity. It takes a considerable amount of hand strength if you were trying to crush it, though considering Flapple's third weakest stat happens to be physical defense, and its speed being the worst stat, it's not the slowest of the apple dragons. That goes to the originally Shield exclusive, and my first favorite evolution of the worm, Appleton.